St. Louis had long been considered a baseball town, but before the Cardinals ran the city, they had to split it. For the first half of the 20th century, they shared not only a city, but in fact a ballpark with the St. Louis Browns, the American Association. The two teams competed for coverage, front office personnel, players, and most of all, for the fans' attention. The Browns, despite being the newer team, were more popular up until the 1920s. They fielded a number of competitive teams, led by Hall of Famer George Sisler, and although they never won the pennant, in 1922 they missed out by only one game. At this time, papers, both local and national, were reporting on them fairly regularly. They showed up in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Washington Post, and New York Times. The papers called Sisler the star of the American League, and proclaimed the Browns as the team that would finally beat the Yankees. This prestige began to fade fast when the Browns' tenants, the Cardinals, began to invest in an elite farm system. These minor league teams grew a base of great players for the Cardinals to sustain success through 20s, 30s, and 40s, as the Browns floundered to compete with higher spending clubs. As the Cardinals increased the quality of play, they also began to expand their presence on a national stage. In 1921, the Chicago Cubs aired the first ever radio broadcast of a game against the rival Cardinals. In 1926, the Cardinals were in a World Series that was broadcast nationally over the radio. Then, by 1927, the Cardinals were broadcasting all their own games on KMOX, KWK, and WIL, where they were the westernmost club on the air. Over time, they would grow a network of stations to retransmit their broadcasts to be the voice of baseball in the West. The city-favored Browns were also given deals with these flagship networks, but the scope of the broadcast was much smaller. In the 30s, the team believed the radio created unwanted competition with larger cities, and that broadcasts would cut into attendance. While the Brownies would see the error in this thinking, that wasn't until the Cards had cemented themselves as the team for many Western listeners, especially in cities which housed Cardinals Farms teams. The two teams' diverging paths would cross once again in 1944, when amidst World War II they both found themselves in the same World Series for very different reasons. The Cardinals were in their third World Series in a row, with Inner Circle Hall of Famer Stan Musial. The Browns had a one-armed player and pitchers who could only play on the weekends. They utilized overlooked players to win while other teams had their best players serving in the war. Nonetheless, St. Louis had two World Series teams, and they were largely rooting for the underdog Browns. St. Louis Post-Dispatch wrote, "Fans from everywhere marvel at the Browns, but they still don't take them seriously as opposed to the National League's Superman." And unfortunately, they were right not to, as the Redbirds would take the series in 6 games. This was the beginning of the end for the Browns. In losing head-to-head, it basically solidified St. Louis as a Cardinal town. In 1947, the Cardinals demanded a separate radio deal with the beloved announcers Harry Carey and Gabby Street, once again leaving the Browns playing second fiddle on the radio. By the early 50s, the Browns had given up on focusing on baseball and gained more notoriety for the stunts they would try and pull, with the Cardinals having success, and in 1953 finally owning the stadium that they had shared with the Browns for 30 years. The writing was on the wall. The Redbirds had won the battle for the city, and the Browns would relocate to Baltimore within the year. While it's easy to attribute the Cards winning out to being the more winning club, their wide footprint for fans and incredibly successful radio programs played just as much a role as their prestigious image in the field and on the papers.